Today we are joined by the lovely Karolina, who works at SINGU. We've had the pleasure of working with SINGU for a while now, and she's a tough woman to pin down, being kept very, very busy, international schedule, New York, Germany, UK, wherever it might be, but actually it is based in Poland. So Karolina, for anybody in industry that might not already know you or be familiar with SINGU, please talk us through, who you are and what you're doing.
Of course. Hi, Sarah. So my name is Karolina. I'm head of growth at SINGU. SINGU is a leading European 𝐇𝐞𝐚𝐝 platform helping real estate portfolios digitize and streamline property operations through a mobile-first cloud-based solution. And our comprehensive suite covers reactive and preventive maintenance, CapEx and vendor management, ESG reporting, IoT integration, and many more. Currently, we serve more than 250 million square meters of GLA across 40 countries with a 99.6% customer retention rate, which we are very proud of.
You came more from a consultancy background, which naturally is quite male dominated as well. Obviously not as bad as it used to be, but in terms of how you found your transition into PropTech and the female representation in this space, is there any differences you've noticed with this industry in particular?
So my path into PropTech definitely wasn't linear. Before consulting, I also had stints with finance, logistics, and tech and logistics. However, the common denominator throughout each of these professional chapters was technology. And I've always been fascinated by how technology can transform legacy industries. And it seemed to me that PropTech is basically the last frontier, given the fact that real estate is traditionally a pretty conservative space where digital transformation still has massive potential. So when I was joining SINGU, not was it only interesting because of a new industry exposure, but also because it seemed familiar. The solution that the problem that we're trying to solve as a company seems familiar because we're trying to scale innovation in places that people experience every day, whether it's offices, warehouses, shopping centers, restaurants, hospitals, universities, name it. So it is technology that literally moves buildings to life. And how does the industry differ versus the other industries that I had exposure to? To be honest, most of them have been male dominated, so it wasn't really a shock for me personally. But what I've noticed is a real shift where more women are in the room, more women are in leadership positions, and that is even visible within our own company, where we have Ania Bartoszewicz-Wnuk, our head of CE, Paulina Stach, head of DACH, Berenika Konieczny, our head of people and culture, and that's testament to the fact that women in leadership is part of SINGU DNA. And I think more and more companies like us are seeing this and are really living by example.
And maybe it's something that the rest of the world has to catch up with, because obviously you're an EU focused company first and foremost, and those names that you mentioned are Eastern European and DACH region type employees. So that also might be something for me to look into for the rest of the series to see if there's, any synergy or disparity in the numbers between the US and the rest of the world, because obviously that tends to be where we get the bulk of our data, the bulk of our conversations, the bulk of our business. So that's a good point. Maybe it's something that stems lower and it's coming from the education people are receiving and the representation people are getting through school, or like maybe the encouragement people are getting or not receiving to study STEM at university, and how that kind of trickles through even now to how many women you're going to see on the PropTech C-suite. So that's actually a really good point. And speaking of that, like, are there any misconceptions you feel like women have in tech that need debunking?
There are a few. So one that personally I find very harmful is when people believe that being assertive is unfeminine, because I find it very discouraging, and I sometimes feel like women may perceive leadership roles as something that just isn't suited to them. But to be honest, from my perspective, I don't think there is anything more feminine than a woman that is confident, communicating clearly, and courageous enough to stand for what she believes in. So that is one which is maybe more broad and not only associated to PropTech itself, but something that I see in general, women in leadership, and that's kind of the association that I came across a few times. But something that I noticed specifically in PropTech is this misconception that women aren't technical enough to succeed in the industry. And, at SINGU, we're at 40% gender parity. And to your point about STEM education, I actually read a report a few weeks ago. Poland is the second in the world in terms of the percentage of women that finish STEM. 42% of STEM graduates are actually women. So simply that narrative isn't true anymore. And the gender gap is narrowing, and women are catching up, and they're catching up fast, in my opinion. So that's another misconception. Lastly, I think one is where women lead with emotion and as if that's a weakness. And I believe that empathy is a data point when you're building solutions for people. And given the fact that real estate is a very people-centric industry to begin with, having women in leadership positions allows our pitches to resonate strongly, right? Because we're leading with empathy. Our products are user-friendly because we're keeping in mind the person that will actually be using the solution. And our value proposition is human-centric as a result. So all of this drives performance on an individual level, at the team level, and obviously at the company level.
It's so true as well. I mean, going back to what you were saying about being a strong woman in industry, again, doesn't have to be PropTech, but I think more generally, when those type of connotations are made, if a woman's saying the same thing that a man might say, for example, being strict in an office or crashing the whip a little bit with a few of her employees, it will be seen as moody, bitchy. Maybe she's on her period, maybe she's hormonal, maybe she's going through the change. So yeah, definitely something that unfortunately crops up more often than it should. But it already sounds like, you know, you've got the data ready. You already understand why the gap in Poland is closing way ahead of the rest of the world. But if there were like any younger females watching this or women thinking of getting into STEM, tech, prop tech, whatever it might be, any words of advice you give them looking back on your career now?
I think a few come to mind. Well, first, I would definitely stop waiting to feel ready. And I was guilty of this many times where I was looking for job descriptions. And for example, I didn't meet one of the 10 criteria they were looking for. And as a result, I didn't even apply for the position, which is obviously not the case, because I even remember a while ago, I was talking to our head of people and culture, and she was saying that typically men apply to positions where they meet 5 or 6 out of the 10 requirements.
Yeah.
Rather, women wait until they hit the 9 or 10. And I think you learn most by doing, and no one is actually fully ready for the job that they will be doing until they actually do it. So I would definitely stop waiting. And if you feel excited about the specific job position, apply.
Yeah.
And you know, the recruiters, to your point, like especially within your field, you know, the due diligence is very good. So in case you're not a good fit, they'll catch that soon, and then you can address those the feedback that I know a lot of my colleagues are receiving when they're applying. My friends that are applying for different types of roles, the feedback is actually actionable. That the recruiters put the time in providing feedback and making sure that the candidate can work on certain areas that need improving. So that's one.
Yeah.
Secondly, I would definitely lead like you and not lead by people who are before you or people that you were exposed to before. Because with the exposure to different types of industry in the past, I've seen a lot of toxic management, a lot of micromanagement. And to be honest, leadership isn't about ego or micromanaging or so-called baptism by fire, which was a common phrase in one of my previous jobs.
Yeah.
It's about empathy. It's about inspiring people, trusting that they can succeed, providing them with some sort of a platform to get more ownership, to challenge them, but at the same time providing them with a network, some sort of a support network that they can rely on, and setting them up for success and not failure.
I reckon, you know, it's having the confidence to apply for the job, but the confidence runs deeper than that. It's having the confidence when you're in the job interview to ask for a higher base salary. And I think that's also part of the reason that we do find ourselves in that gender pay gap, is more often than not, you know, our male counterparts will have the confidence to ask the question. And whether it's in work or in life, again, it's being able to take that rejection, almost like that rejection theory that you see people do on YouTube and stuff, where they put themselves in positions that they know is going to be super uncomfortable, but they realize, oh, that awkwardness passes. And like you said, creating that network, reaching out to people, whether it be us as recruiters or getting feedback from a female mentor in industry. Hopefully these type of conversations shine a light on girls that are in here and doing it already, and hopefully provide a safe space for people wanting to come through, or even just gain some transparency. You know, the friends that are looking for jobs and not sure how much they should be paid and what is the going rate, or why does my CV keep getting rejected? Hopefully definitely an outlet, an outlet for people like that to come to us for advice. So I just want to say thank you for obviously joining me for this conversation. Whoever watches it, if you see me and Karolina around at some of the conferences later this year, next year, I'm sure you'll be back over for PropTech London and PropTech Connect and all of those events that are keeping us busy. I think MIPIM was where we first made the connection as well. So yeah, wherever we may cross paths in the future, feel free to approach me and Karolina, and we can be, your voices in industry.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.